Hey there, just another video on a new lens that I got that I've already taken apart, as you can see. This is the Nikon Nikkor 25 to 50 millimeter f4. I thought it was a good option because I'd read that it's very sharp, and I wanted something that was pretty wide on the speed booster, and I didn't really need a super zoomed in shot. I have the Angino or whatever. Um, yeah, just a couple of things that I noticed. For one, it's an f4, right? But I noticed the aperture didn't actually open all the way. And so I thought maybe in declicking this lens, I could do something about that. So I've already declicked it. I've got the little piece here. Pretty easy. You actually need to take off, I think, yeah, you need to take the silver part off, and then it's just right there. You just take a couple screws off. No big deal. Or was it actually? No, I think it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in there. It was a while back, but anyways, seeing that functionality, I thought, oh, that's really weird. Maybe I can open the whole thing. And it turns out you certainly can open the whole thing. So when the lens is actually put together, you know, it truly is limited to, oh, I forgot, there's two elements that kind of go together. It truly is limited to it's about there. It's hexagonal, probably not good bokeh, but I just thought, man, how can I get these parts on here in a way that would allow me to open it up? And I realized there's kind of two things in the way. Maybe if I put this, yeah, here we go. So let's see if I can focus a little better on that. So basically, the issue you're running into is that this inner ring has a couple of things that are stopping it when rotating. I did a lot of experimenting, and I realized that it's really this. It stops here, stops there. For one, it's actually this little, oops, sorry. It's actually this little apparatus with the screws right there. It's hard to see in the light. Yeah, maybe that's pretty good. But you see, it actually hits, it almost has like a little notch cut out there, but it hits that notch. On the other side, it hits that notch too. That's actually not the only thing, because I did already take this off and I just put it back on for the video, but it actually has notches on the other side too. At the bottom, it's kind of harder to see. Yeah, how am I going to do that? It's hard to see, but there's sort of a rim. There's sort of a rim here, right up in here, and that rim actually hits. Yeah, gosh, how am I going to show you that? That rim hits as well. It hits here, and then it hits there. Well, actually, it doesn't hit there yet. When you take the block off, it does hit there. So after messing around with it a little bit, I realized that the problem isn't entirely. I clipped off some of it here. Let me focus. I clipped off some of it on the inside right here, and so where this can hit the edge, it did actually give me a little bit of light. So maybe clipping off a tiny bit is good. And here, I'll show you how much I just clipping and clipping, and I'm like, it stopped making it better. It made it better a little bit right at first, but it kind of just stopped. Yeah, you can kind of see how much I'm doing there. So this is way too much. Even that little bit right out here, that was about enough. Like, anyways, so that's not the problem. This is the problem. So, trying to get some light while I can show it to you guys. Okay, there we go. So, the problem is that after you have that portion, you chip that part off, this just slams straight into there. So it is actually opening, sorry, it's not, it is actually opening fairly wide. So here's the start of it. It opens, I would say it's pretty close, but you can just see those edges, right? That's not all the way. I mean, all the way looks like this. Nice and smooth. So I'm gonna see what I can do about maybe grinding down this edge, or somehow maybe even sanding or filing it down. Okay, so I can confirm after a little bit of working here. Let me get a better focus for this. A little bit of working it. We have full aperture. So this looks similar, and I bet it's something like a 2.8. It actually does go beyond, so you can see like the marker here. Like here's 4, right? And it goes about that far. That might be a 2.8, it might be just above it, but just from the size of the glass, I'm thinking, and just the type of lens, I'm thinking it's 2.8. But honestly, I can't really say until I get it on the camera whether it's going to be a constant aperture or not, because I think maybe some darkening comes from like when you zoom in. It's possible that that's not going to be a thing. That would be cool. But I can say, let's see, if we zoom in, yeah, the aperture at least stays constant in appearance, which is kind of a thing because this is so deep that when the lens apparatus goes all the way down, you're still kind of, I had to file very, very carefully, very finely. So it was metal, but the biggest struggle with it would be kind of the inside ring there. Maybe you can see better from this side. It was just, you know, I had to get like kind of a little edge file and kind of file away at that inner edge there. The whole length of it was easy because you could just get it on there and just kind of file away at it evenly, but you still had to kind of dig in for that one part. I tried to be as neat as possible. If you look at it from here, it doesn't look too bad, though I think there's just a little nick, but you're almost not going to see that, I don't think. So one thing I would say is that it's pretty messy. So I got out some alcohol and was just kind of cleaning it with, like, you know, a little paper towel or whatever after every time I did it. And I went slowly because I don't want to go over. So I would recommend, if you're going to do this, go slowly and stay clean, because here's one thing about this lens. When the whole apparatus goes down, I mean, you're just like exposed in there. I put a bunch of grease, some lens grease, in the joints that actually have the moving parts, but when you put the lens back on, it's still sort of exposed. I mean, sorry, when you put the back on, it's still somewhat exposed. So either way, it's kind of a weird one to keep clean. And then another note, so there's these little gold pieces here. There's a little guide nut actually that goes there if you're having trouble like figuring out where does it actually go. But as far as the parfocalness, I'm gonna have to check what direction it needs to be. I did try unscrewing a lens element on my Canon 15 and 150 because it was easy to do, and you know, it didn't really help, even though that lens needed to be closer to the lens. So really, the more I was thinking about it, the more I'm thinking this probably won't help unscrewing that bit. What might are these shims. There's about 3 of them. So one of them's kind of thick, and then 2 like real floppy, flimsy ones. you know, as I was working on it, it just sort of reminded me of like PL mount shims that you kind of adjust your camera with. Okay, so yeah, focus still seemed good, nice and sharp. The zoom, and I'm not exactly checking the parfocality of it, obviously. I don't see a darkening there, but I'm actually not all the way stopped down. So this is about where we were, I think, something like this, and that's the light we gained. I certainly see a difference. It was maybe right there. Gain, you know, we gained something. This is it wide open. I turned the ISO down, and I'm just going to do a little bit of a parfocal zoom test here. So I'm zoomed all the way in, actually. I'm 9 feet away, and I'm going to come out, and I can't quite show you the focus peaking that I'm seeing, but I can tell you, I can't tell, it's gone out of focus there. Now, I focus this direction, it becomes sharp again. And that was actually the direction away from infinity focus. So what that tells me is that I actually need to shim this lens. I may shim it in that spot. I think that would actually work. In fact, I think that would be the best move, to shim where those shims are, because I don't see any other way to shim it. So yeah, I'm going to give that a try. Also, before I do that, we're going to do another 35mm test. This is wide open, lower aperture, so we can see a little better. And then I'll put the 35mm f3.5 on it, wide open as well. Okay, this is 35mm at f3.5. That's wide open for this lens. So I do think there is a slight darkening when you go into the further zoom. It's hard to see in anywhere except for maybe darker environments, like the shadow type of environment. When I get in there, you'll notice the center go a little darker. If you can see that, go ahead and back it up. You see how that seems pretty clear to me. Now, it's really like the middle. It's kind of an odd darkening. I don't really see it on the edge so much, but I think it's the whole picture. Either way, I think what you end up doing is you end up taking this from a f4 constant aperture, which they sometimes are not as accurate as you would think as far as constant apertures. But here, let's take it back down to 4. Where is it? It's about, yeah, it's about 4. So let's zoom in with that. Yeah. So you actually don't really lose your constant aperture nature, but you gain a nice bright wide shot. So I think it's just awesome, because honestly I'd rather know the quirks, work around them if I want constant aperture, and honestly if I want sharper, I'm going to be down by 4 or even beyond that, and then I've got my constant aperture. If I can adjust the parfocal range, that would be great, but generally speaking I'd like to use this this lens as sort of multiple primes. So it's not really about zooming. I've got a lot of lenses that do that, but yeah, this is pretty cool so far. Wide open. Okay, so I'm actually going to use a little bit of this orange tape here. I'm just doing 2 layers to try and get like the parfocal going. I also kind of touched this part up a little bit. I just like neatened it up. I mean, I know it doesn't look neat, but I sort of neatened it up as far as that angle there, just to be smoother. And then actually when I really look at it on this side, even if there is like a little bit of a nub like right here, I realize it's actually on the seam. You're not going to see that part. So basically none of these mods are going to be visible, which is super cool. And the last thing I'll do, if you're gonna even declick the aperture, is you're gonna wanna buy a type of lens grease. I got this cheap. It works. I used it on another one, damping grease. So one more little test. I've greased the lens up. I cleaned up the tape and screwed everything together so that it's nice and smooth. And ooh, feels really good. So anyways, this is wide open. And just to give you one more test, I'm gonna stop it down to about where it was. So like here's where I got it. That's where it was. And so this should be a parfocal at f4 constant aperture. And yeah, looks pretty dang close to me. It's almost like a tiny little section right there that kind of goes funny. But hey, I'd call it parfocal. So final note on the lens, basically I realized that after I've done the shimming, you lose infinity focus, particularly when you're zoomed in. There is some kind of weird effect that when you're actually wide, it's pretty easy to get focus, and then you zoom in, and it just gets way tighter. You end up all the way at the infinity, and it still looks a little soft. So I decided against the shims, and I just greased it up. I think that added a little bit in there to kind of act as a shim, not much, but basically you sort of lose parfocal. It's not far, so we'll zoom in here, we'll get it focused, and then zoom out. So you see it's not far, that's not quite focused, that's about focused. And you know, the thing I don't like about it is when you're zoomed in, so I'm 10 feet away now, when you're zoomed in, this is 10 feet, sorry, that's about 10 feet on the zoom, the range, like the actual printed on the lens range, that's 10 feet, right? Which I measured 10 feet. When we go back here, just go slightly out of focus and to bring it back into focus to put it about 7 feet. So I don't like that. I feel like maybe it was intended to be parfocal on a Nikon camera. I don't have my Nikon with me. Plus it's a film camera, so you'd really just be taking my word for it. But I think depending on your speed booster, if you have one that's maybe adjustable to give you more back focus, then I would say hell yeah, shim it and then adjust that. But mine is a metabones. It's, you know, delicate. I use it with other lenses, so I don't want to just, you know, do it just for this lens, even though this might be the all-arounder lens here. But when I think about it, what I want to use it for is I want the option to go full aperture so I can get a little bit more low light shots. Plus it's pretty sharp. This is full. This is wide open. So that's pretty dang sharp if you ask me. And I just wanted an all-arounder that I can treat as a, you know, a couple of primes. So I really don't need perfect parfocal zoom. If I'm following a subject, with this lens on my camera, it actually works great because of how wide it is, and the slight focus difference. You're following things, you're moving with your feet, so unless it's a huge difference, like on my other Nikon, it is a huge difference. This one, which is the can't even see it, but it's a 35, whatever, you know. Okay. It's 35 to 105, I believe, and it's a push-pull. And oh man, it's really nice lens, but you basically the parfocal is like way out. It's not supposed to be a parfocal lens, so it's way off. And when you zoom in on someone, it's just painfully obvious. So the fact that we actually get pretty close is actually good enough for me because I can use it live. And but mainly I love to use this on some films. I need to thin out my lenses, so this is going to allow me to do that. So yeah, point here, strike a balance between when you declick it, you're going to grease it. You could shim it. If you have the right adapter, that might work even better. But we can see right here, this aperture worked. So the one big success I would say is that we got the aperture to work